Welcome to this Adobe XD live workshop. My name is Jakub and I'm the creative lead here at CareerFoundry. At CareerFoundry, we provide training in UX design, UI design, web development, and data analytics. And we have a community of over 3,000 students, graduates, mentors, tutors, and career specialists. With me today is Jamie, who is from Adobe XD. She will be answering all your questions about XD in the background, while Elizé taught, who is a UX designer, educator, content creator, as well as Adobe XD instructor, will be taking you through everything you need to know. Well, not everything you need to know, but most of the fundamental functions of Adobe XD today. Make sure you follow Elizé on Instagram and YouTube. I'll drop the links just in a second. She posts amazing and very useful design content for you to enjoy. I'm super excited about today. I've been using Adobe products for so long. I was designing my first website in Adobe Dreamweaver, editing photos and videos in Premiere and Photoshop. And finally, as a UX design student at CareerFoundry, I can use Adobe product for designing my screens and wireframes and different prototypes. So with that, actually, last more thing, if you are interested in studying with us, make sure you stay tuned in until the end when I'll let you know about our latest scholarship that we offer. And with that, I don't want to take any more time. So with that, I'll let Elizé take it away.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let me share my screen with you guys. You can see I created my presentation also in Adobe XD. So you have that capability in here as well. So introduction to Adobe XD. Welcome everybody. This is going to be the basics of Adobe XD. And if you've never used a design tool previously, no worries. Jamie said this earlier, like this is going to be like a big hug for you guys. Introduction to Adobe XD into using a design tool. We're going to be creating a wireframe and a high fidelity screen. So if you've never created that, you should feel more confident and comfortable after today's session. I will say, feel free to if you have two screens, to download Adobe XD and have it on one of your screens and play around as I'm doing it, or B, watch the recording of this. It will be available tomorrow, and you can play the video and then work on this on your design file at the same time. I'll do play and pause and work with me through this. And you can use your own, potentially your own sketches that you're working with too, if you are in a boot camp. I'm super excited about this because I also went through a boot camp, so I'm really excited about this collaboration with CareerFoundry. I went through boot camp in 2015. And so I'm a big proponent of boot camps. So yeah, again, really excited. So who am I? I'm Elizé. Like Jakub said, I do UX design. I teach for Adobe, and I also create fun, educational, funky fun. I said fun many times, I guess. Content on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. All right. So what are we covering today? We are going to do an interface tour. Then we're going to do the basics, artboards, creating buttons, shapes, typefaces, talk a little bit about repeat grids, some other little features I'm going to sprinkle in here. And then we're going to create a wireframe. We're going to create high fidelity screen, and we're going to talk about some of the plugins that are really going to help assist you when you're creating your first screens. All right, so Adobe XD is an all-in-one tool. What does that mean? Well, it basically has everything you need as a UX designer. So you can design web interfaces, mobile, watch, voice interfaces, all in Adobe XD. Plus, you can prototype in it as well. And you can share your designs with users to do user testing, share it with developers to show all your specs. And it's really just a tool, everything that you need all here. So it's for Mac as well as Windows users. And they also have an app for iOS and Android. And I'll just mention it really quickly because I love it so much. You can design on your desktop, connect it to the app on your phone, and you can see it in real time on your phone as you're designing. So you can see, okay, maybe that button was a little too big on mobile, but it looked good on desktop. So it's just a really good app to download along with the XD desktop experience. All right, so is it free? Yes, XD is free. That's the best part. So you have unlimited designing and prototyping. There are some limitations with one active shared document, one active shared link. And that's something you don't even have to worry about when you're first starting. Maybe when you start working with teams and so forth, you'll have to worry about that. But for now, it's completely unlimited use until October. So there's no limitations right now until October. So make use of that. Cool. Let's get into the interface tour. So like I said, my presentation is built in Adobe XD. So what you're seeing here, this big gray screen, is my pasteboard. It's like this whole big ocean of where you can design. Okay, so this is where we're going to be doing most of all of our designs here. And then within there are artboards. Because we don't want just some random shapes floating about in the ocean of the pasteboard, we're placing them on certain boards and confining our design to a certain space. We'll talk a little bit more about creating artboards in a minute. On the left-hand side is your toolbar. Over here on the left, you'll see this little select, this little rectangle, a little circle, etc. This is your toolbar. These are all the tools you're going to need to use in XD. And it's so slim. There's like 7 options here, right? And why that is because first, if we look at the tools, you see one option is to select. So you can just literally use it to select little objects like this. Then we have R for rectangle. Pretty simple, creating rectangles. And I'm saying R for rectangle because I'm talking about the shortcuts. When I hover over it, it says rectangle R. That means R is the shortcut. So it's so simple, right? If I'm like, oh, I want to create a rectangle, press R on your keyboard and you should be able to create that rectangle. You don't even have to use this toolbar. Then we have an ellipse, creating a circle, which is E is the shortcut. We have a polygon, like a triangle shape. We have a line, and then I'm not going to even talk about the pen tool. We're going to move over to text as an option, and then artboard. That's everything in your toolbar right there. And why it's so slim, I want to talk a little bit about kind of how that works with interface design. Is you'll notice that a lot of websites, mobile apps, all it is squares, circles, lines, and text. You're going to notice that here, like with Nordstrom, square, text, line, 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 plus sign here. YouTube, these are rectangles with curves, rectangle, circle, line. And you're just going to start to notice that trend when you start to look at more apps and websites like, wow, they're just a bunch of shapes. And that's what makes it somewhat easy to start getting into the tool and start creating your own designs. Now, of course, the complexity later on with is where do we place these buttons and so forth, right? So that's super easy to kind of get into this toolbar and start designing. Now, on the bottom here, on the bottom left-hand corner, you're going to see 3 more menu options. The first one is your assets panel, where you're going to have all your colors, your main colors you're using, all of the typefaces you're using here, and all your components. And we're going to go deeper into this later, but that's where you'll find it in this little menu. Right under that is your layers panel. So if I were to select, let's say this layer, you saw that on the left-hand side, it changes and it says, here's highlighted is this layer, this group here. Okay, so I know that this is a group because it has a little folder. And if I open the folder, I can see all the little layers underneath inside this group. And we'll talk about how to create groups later. But if you want to ever get into a certain layer, just select into it and you'll see this little, open up your little layers panel and you can find that particular layer. Pretty simple. And then underneath that is where you'll find your plugins. So let me go back to all my plugins here. So here's all your plugins that you can download. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about plugins in a little bit. Now, something that you're maybe noticing is on the right-hand side is my property inspector, this little drawer right here, okay? And when I select a layer, you're gonna notice that there's different options that change depending on what layer I select over here. This is where you're really gonna be manipulating and changing and designing that particular layer. So if it's a font that I've selected here, on the right-hand side, I can change the font style, I can change the font colors. It's really everything I want to do is going to be over here. So rule of thumb, if you're like, you're selecting something, how do I manipulate, change it? It's always going to be on this right-hand side. Okay, cool. And then lastly, at the very top, you're going to see it says design, and then there's a prototype option. And the prototype option now allows me to start prototyping and building my prototypes. I'm just going to show you a really quick example of what that looks like. So this is a prototype. I have it be interactive where I can interact with my prototype here. Right? So that's what makes it like just creating those interactions to make it feel all that much more real. And you can build those prototypes here in Adobe XD. Super cool, right? This is actually the screen we're going to be designing today, a little sneak peek into that. And then you can also share your designs. So we talked about it a little earlier. You can share with developers, you can do a user testing, and you can share these links. So you have these options, design, development, user testing, and you can share these links with other people so they can review what those your designs look like. Okay, so I'm going to go deeper into prototyping and sharing in next week's workshop. We're going to focus today's session all on design. So let's get designing. Let's get into it. I am designing sort of a combination between a Spotify and a YouTube, where someone has a music app and they want to see like live music on their app. I designed this because honestly, this is what I want. I love live music. I'm missing live music. So I want to be notified when my favorite artists are playing live so I can catch that live stream. So I took just a couple screenshots of Spotify, some other apps that I'm going to take some inspiration from when I get into the final visual look and feel process. I'd already created sort of the steps I want the user to take in my app. And then I started creating a sketch. Now, as you can tell, sketches don't have to be beautiful. Does this look like amazing? No, it does not. So a lot of times I'll tell my students, don't worry about making it beautiful. It just has to be legible, right? You have to understand what's going on in this screen. So that's, I wanted to show you a little example of what that could look like. So typically we'll go from sketches to a low fidelity wireframe. And if you're entering a bootcamp, that would be probably one of the steps you are going to be taking in the design process, is going from sketching into wireframes. So let's create our first wireframe. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to first need a, does anyone guess? An artboard. I don't know if you've guessed it, maybe in your head. So how do we create an artboard? So if you remember on the toolbar, there's this option to create an artboard here. And the shortcut is also A. Now, once I select that, over here on the right-hand side are all my options for artboard sizes. So I don't have to guess. I can just select something from here. So it already shows me what the iPhone X size is here. So when I select that, oh no, my screen. Then it's already pulling in an artboard inside my paste board for me. So I don't have to guess the width and the height for this type of artboard. It already has that laid out for me. Okay, so I was in artboard mode. So I have my little, you see my cursor is kind of like this little square looking thing. And I want it to go back into select mode because I want to take this photo off of this artboard. It kind of got into it when I brought in the artboard. So how I do that is I can go into my toolbar and go into select mode, or if I hover over it, the shortcut is V. Now, why I'm talking a lot about shortcuts, and I'm going to try to drill it into you guys, is because it's going to make life that much easier for you guys to use shortcuts. And this is about starting to create good habits early on when you're starting to design. Okay, so here it is. I have my artboard. It looks nice. And I can see the dimensions of my artboard over here on the right-hand side where it says width 375 and height is 812. So those are where the dimensions are. Okay. So typically I will design my screens from top to bottom. And so I would start from the very top here, which is going to be an image. And I'm going to show you guys just again what that looks like. It's going to look like this. It's going to look, that's the high fidelity. So that's what we're trying to aim for. But typically I use this kind of cross to mark that it's going to be an image. And how I'm going to do this, I'm just going to bring in a rectangle shape. Now rectangle, where do we find that? Over here in the toolbar. What's the shortcut? R. Yeah, pretty simple. All right, so I'm going to go into R and I'm going to create my rectangle. And I'm just dragging along this like bottom right corner, trying to drag it into the place where I want it to go. Ooh, I just let that go and it's there. Okay, so from there, I am going to create this little close button, I'm going to want to use an icon for this. So I'm going to go into plugins. Yeah, we're already going in there. You guys are getting going deep into it. So plugins. You can find plugins to download by going into your upper left-hand corner. And it says discover plugins is the option here. And then you can search. And I'm going to use this Icons for Design plugin. I've already downloaded it, so I don't need to. But let's say I'm going to download another one. I'll show you what that looks like Overflow. If I install it, it says plugin installed. Cool. I can exit out of that guy. And I can go find it in my plugins menu down below here on the bottom left corner. This is where I showed you earlier where my plugins live. You can also find it here, but it's much easier for me to like look through it in here. Okay, so this is where you'll find your plugins. And we're going to use the icons for design. I already got something here. So what I'm going to do is search for what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a close button. So I'm just going to search close. And you're seeing all these free icons that you can use. And so I'm just going to make sure you have like this artboard or a layer or something selected here. Otherwise, it's going to bring in the icon somewhere crazy. So if I want this like simple little close button here, I'm just going to select it and it's going to bring it over near here to my artboard. And I'm going to like, okay, I want it in this little right-hand upper corner. Boom. Easy peasy. Then I want a play button, a play icon. Now, the reason why I use this plugin is because there are so many icons that are already created out there. You don't need to reinvent the close button, the play button. There's a million of those out there. It's great, especially when you're first starting to utilize what other people have already created so that you don't have to do any of these types of more in-depth design creations here. So I'm just going to use this little, oh, see, I did it. I did the wrong thing. That's what I was intending to show you. So that's what happens when you don't select your artboard ahead of time. So then I'm going to press my play button and bring it in. Now that's so tiny, it looks ridiculous. And I want to make it bigger. So I'm just going to go in here and you can take one of these little circles in the corners here, and you can just drag it along to change the shape. Now I don't want it, I want it to maintain this shape. I don't want it to kind of go like weirdly thin or anything like that. So I'm going to hold down Shift to make it, to hold down Shift while I expand to kind of keep and maintain its shape. Now, the other thing you're seeing here is that these little blue thin lines are kind of popping in and saying, hey, this is centered in the middle, and this is also centered horizontally as well as vertically. Smack down like a little target kind of, right, with those two lines. So I can just let it go and I know that it's centered. The other way that you can center an icon like this, like let's move it over here, boom. And I want it centered into this layer here, is I can grab this and then I want it to center to this background. So I need to grab that other background as well. So how do I do that? I select this, shift and hold the background layer. And I can go into my layers panel. If you remember on the bottom left-hand corner, the second option, I'll see those two options are highlighted. Those two are highlighted. And now I want to center it. So I'm going to go over here on the right-hand side. Again, everything, all the interactions you need to do are over here. And at the very top, you're going to see all the ways to align something. So I want to align it in the center. So I'm going to select Align Center. Cool. Well, that's in the center, but I also want it to be aligned right in here. So I'm also going to align middle, the second option here. Boom. And now it's aligned. So that's where you'll find your alignment. So you see right now it's disabled because I haven't selected anything. You always need to make sure your layers are selected so that this properties inspector is enabled for you to take action. Cool. All right, starting to have the top part of my screen here. The final thing I want is this kind of enlarge button. So I want this video, you can play it, but I want it so that you can make it, expand it and make it larger and watch it in full screen. So I'm gonna go back into my plugins, back into my icons, and I'm gonna just say expand and let's see if that shows. Yep, okay, cool. So I'm gonna make sure this layer is selected and I click onto that little expand and here we go. And then finally, I want it to just say live because I want the audience or the user to know that this is a live music going on right now. I just got a question. There was a couple questions, but I'm just going to answer this one right now. Okay, so is there also a way you can create your own icons if you wanted to? So yes, you can create your own icons. And you can use the pen tool to get into that. I would say that you can create really simple iconography in here. Like, let's say I wanted to create this little play button. It's really easy to do. I would just take this little polygon and I can make my own play button. And then I can maybe put it to the side. But it's just, again, going to go get more into outside of the basics that we're talking about today. So I wanted to make it super simple and easy and stuff that I still use, the basics of what I use. I don't need to create. And if you want to, if you love creating icons and stuff like that, there's so many videos, tutorials for that. Okay, I'm just going to also label this. So there's another question. Can you rename the layers? So I'm just going to answer that before I move on. So in your layers panel, you can double click and you can label it. So you can say photo or whatever you want. So if you want, obviously it's a best practice to start labeling your layers. I don't really do that until near the end because I'm constantly changing them, editing them, removing things, deleting. I'm constantly improving upon my design. So I don't want to be attached to any of my layer names. So I don't do that, but it's a good practice to start labeling your layers. Okay, let's move on. So now let's get into text. So with text, to create text, guess what the shortcut is? T for text. It's already made it red for some reason. Oh, I think it's because the last thing I did was red. So it's red here. If I want to change this color, there's a couple ways to do that. I can go over here on the right-hand side and I can change it to black. So you can just move along this little color wheel and you can change out the colors. Cool. So That's there. And typically when I'm creating a wireframe, I want everything grayscale. So black, white, grays, it looks nothing like a high fidelity finished screen. This is just the architecture of the screen, the bones, the skeleton of it. And when you start getting into high fidelity, you'll start to kind of get nitpick on colors. Does this look good? Does the typography look good? And you're starting to come out of just wanting to understand the basic structure, and you spend too much time on the minutia of the design, and that should not come till later when you're starting to feel really confident about your designs. So grayscale. So here we had our first text, T for text. Now, typically I will just, if I already have a text layer on my screen, I'm just going to copy it and paste it, and I'm just going to use it somewhere else on the screen. And the next sentence here is, or the next words I'm using is artist name, and it's going to be pretty large. I want this to be my largest text on the screen because I want it to be the most noticeable on the screen, the most important part of the screen. And I want to make it bigger. So one of the ways that I can do that I typically use is I'll take this little blue circle here on the bottom of this text, and I will just expand it to make it bigger. And from there, I'm going to change this to artist name. If anyone has a suggestion for an artist name, maybe you can put it in there. Put it in the chat is what I meant. So artist name is here. And let's see, I'm gonna make it, maybe make it more like a 30. So I can see also on the right-hand side, this is the other way to change it. If I want to be like, it's a 36. Oh, I actually did 56. Woo, 36. I can change that right there. And it's now a 36 font. So there's a couple ways that you can adjust the font size. Now, something that I want to share with you guys is the fact that we want to start to organize our screens in a way that's going to be really efficient for us later down in the road. Later down the road, not on the road, later down the road. So what do I mean by that? Well, typically, let me show you my screens here. Typically, you're going to want to have only a certain amount of font sizes and styling that you use on a screen. So you don't want to have 50 different sizes for every single thing, right? You want to be consistent. We talk a lot about consistent design. And we create design systems to stay consistent. And what that could potentially look like, I'm just going to show you a piece of one, is that you'll have like, okay, this is for my main headers, these are for subheaders, these are for my body fonts. You want to have an organization to it. You don't want to have 50, 60 crazy fonts all wackadoodle on your screen. You want to be consistent. So the other reason why we want to then start thinking about using character styles on this left-hand side in our assets panel is because if I add this text as a character style, so it says, you see here, it says Poppins 22, it's now here. If I have a character style here and I decide later down the road I'm designing a fourth screen, maybe I'm designing screen number 50, and I'm like, oh, I want to change that character style. Well, then I would have to go to each individual character style and change that, right? If I wanted everything to be red, I would have to go and do that for each one. And that is so time consuming. So if you're new to design and you're doing this, please use character styles, because instead, if I want to change this character style, all I need to do is right click and edit this character style and make it red. And now you see it's reflected on all my screens. Magic. When I was first designing, like I don't think there was this option, or maybe I just wasn't using it. So, and I'll tell you, I wasted hours doing those tedious little tasks. And there's now these couple features in XD that can make life that much more quicker for you if you use them correctly, like using character styles and color styles, which we'll talk about. Okay, so let's create a character style. I'm going to remove this one. this is going to be my new character style, and how I create that is I go over here, left-hand side, and click the little plus button, and now it's a character style. And if I want to rename it, and this is typically what I will rename ahead of time as I'm designing, is, okay, I want this to be my H1. What does that mean? Well, it's my header style one. It's my largest style, H1. Cool. We got some names in here. We got George Bluth. We got Alicia Keys, Coldplay, Tony Bennett. Okay, I like these. Let's do George Bluth, because that's the first one I see here. So I'm just going to double click and paste in that name that you guys sent. So thank you very much for whoever sent that. So now we see underneath the artist name, the second thing here is the 2200 watching now. 2200 watching now. And that, so I'm gonna, again, so what I do is like I mentioned, I copy and I paste another version of it. That's how I usually do my text, but you can also just do T for text. So 2200 watching now. Now that's crazy big. These are now competing for hierarchy of visual hierarchy here, right? And I want to make this really small. It's not that important for me to know how many people are watching now. So I'm going to take this guy here and I'm going to make it smaller. So cute. And I want to get rid of the boldness. So where do I go? Over in my property inspector. When I ask you guys questions, I hope you're maybe like, you can say them out loud or you can say them in your head, but it's good for you guys to also be thinking alongside with me. Because when you're designing, you'll remember, you're like, oh yeah, R for rectangle, property inspector, yes. So here, 2200 watching now, I changed the font, the fonts, oh my gosh, it's leaving my, what is that called? The font weight, there we go. So the font weight there. And I also want to make this a character style. So I'm going to add that over here next to character styles, a little plus button, and double click. And I'm going to call it small body. So this is my small body font. It's not my regular body font, my small body font. Kind of sounds funny now that I'm thinking about it. Small body. Okay, then here I have two icons and text. Where am I going to go for an icon? Yes, into icons for designs in that plugin. And then I'm just going to look for an add button and make sure it's selected here. I click the little add button and I bring it in. Yay, little add button. So as you can see again, I just drag in the side and hold the shift key to maintain the same width and height, and I can make that smaller. Cool. At this stage, I'm just trying to get not make everything perfect in sizing, just somewhat seemingly to where it will be. It does not need to be perfect when you get into high fidelity, and then you go further into making all the little improvements upon it is when you're going to need to worry about making everything more perfect. This is not about perfection at this stage. So save, and I'm going to add this little plus button. Now here we're going to do a group. Why do I want to have certain things be groups? Well, let's say I want to move these to this little button here. I'm going to make this a little bigger now. Let's say I want to move this little button over here on the right-hand side. Well, now I have to grab this layer and then move it. Otherwise, I want these groups because these kind of go together. They move around the page together. They're in the same little family. So how I can make those a group is I can just grab these, drag with my select button and just catch and group this section. All right, so I grabbed this and I can grabbed this, right click. Oh, why is it not working? Oh, one of my little mouse pads isn't working. I have to use my keyboard mouse. You can right click and then just select group. Now the shortcut for that is Command G. And I think it's the same for, or maybe it's, oh, I think it's Control G on Windows. Okay, so that's my little group. Yay. And I want to create another little group with the share and this icon. So I'm going to look for, let's do a share icon. Let me just select something here and share. Cool. Take this, copy, paste it, and bring it down here and relabel this share. And because you can see, I'm double clicking to get into being able to edit this button here. Okay, now I'm going to take these two elements, these two layers, right click and group, or Command G or Control G. Yay, my little groups. And now I actually want to group these two things together because I also want to, like, if I want to move these down, up and down, I want to be able to do that within this group. So I'm going to take all of this and make it another group. Ah, craziness, I know. But this is so that I can move things here, like I can move it to the right and left, this little group, but I can also double click to get into this layer, and I can find it also in my layers panel, this group, and I can label this if I wanted to, save, share, like we talked about, double click to do that. And then I can also move that group. So it's just groups within groups. They're like larger families with smaller families in between. Now, this is kind of one of the common pitfalls I see when people are first starting to design is layers and groups. So get ahead of the curve and start getting comfortable with creating groups, with creating layers, okay, and understanding how they work together. Because once you get it, it's like, oh, it feels really good. All right, so now underneath that, we're going to create our first button, guys. Yay! Before I do that, okay, someone asked what's the difference between a low fidelity sketch and a wireframe? They're the same. Same thing. Same. If you've been to Thailand, same but different. Yeah, it's the same thing. You kind of use them interchangeably. All right, so let's create the donate button. First, we're going to create this rectangle shape. What do we click? This little rectangle, or shortcut, R for rectangle. Yes, for those of you who got that. So I created my little rectangle. Again, I'm in the rectangle mode in my cursor. I want to get back into select mode, so I'm just going to select V. That's select, right? Or I can go back in my toolbars and click select. There's my rectangle. Now I want to have some text inside, so I'm going to do T for text and put that right in there, and I'm going to put donate. Cool. Now I want to make that bigger. Now for this, I am just going to add that into my character style. Right now, I'm just going to label it like my button font. You could always change the names and stuff as you want to later on. Now we're going to create our first component. Whee! So we talked about character styles and how you can edit that one character style that will reflect on all the other screens. The same thing goes for components. If I have something, let's give you my example here. If I have something like this little live button or this little live icon, I guess, that I'm using across all of my screens, well, what if I want to change it? What if I want to be like, oh, I want it actually to be orange? Well, then I would have to go into each individual one and make everything orange or change some aspect of this component. And it's something that I'm reusing over and over and over again. That's what components are. They're like buttons or something that you're going to be reusing throughout your screen many, many times. So instead, we have something called components. So this is something I made as a component here. And this is my master or my main component, we now call it. I'm still having trouble with it. It just changed from master to main. So this is my main component, and I know it's my main component because it has this little green diamond here. And I'm going to talk about how to create them in a minute, but it has this little green diamond. All of the replicas or copies of that main component do not have that filled in green diamond. If I wanted to find that main component, and I'm in this component, I can right click and I can say edit main component. It's going to bring me here. So this is the master or main component that rules them all, rules all the replicas. Because this is the one that I birthed. This is my first one I created. So it is the main one. It rules them all. So if I want to edit this one, I'm going to, let's say, change this background color to green. Well, you're going to see that reflected across all my designs. Now that live is everywhere. Okay, so it's kind of a similar thing to the character styles where you're creating something like a button, let's say a reusable aspect of your screens that you're using over and over again, like this donate button we're going to do, and you want to be able to edit and change it and just reflect across all the screens. Again, very, very useful. And it seems like kind of tedious when you're doing this, when you're designing initially, but later on it saves you so much time. Okay, let's make this a component. So I'm going to grab these two layers. And remember before you had to create a group, you had to right click to make it a group. Well, instead we're going to do make component. Yay, it's a component and it's my main component because it has this little green triangle. This is the one to rule them all because it was the first one. It's like my Frankenstein, the first one. So this is my main component. Yay. So if I were to make an instance of this component, I can just grab this, make a copy, Command C, Command V. Here's a copy of my component. You could also bring in the component from over here on the left-hand side. I just dragged it right in. Look at all my replicas, yes. So now if I change this guy, it's reflecting on all of them. Whee! Cool, I think you get it, components. Again, down to the end of the screen here, guys. All right, so the next thing is, it says other live sets. All right, so I'm gonna copy this, paste it. Ooh, I know what I'm gonna put here later with the text. I'm gonna give you the names that you gave me, the Alicia keys and whatnot. Okay, so this I want to be my H2. I don't want it to be the same as this main other header because it's way big. But I still want it to be fairly prominent, like a second header. So I am going to now add that to my character styles, and now it's my H2. Yay! And I could just drag these over here on the character style. I can just drag them to kind of reorder them if I want to. Then let's make these little pictures here. These are the other live sets. So R to create the shape. Cool. T to make text. That's so big. Okay. I'm going to want to change that and make it smaller. I don't want it to be bold. And I'm going to make it a 16 font. Typically 16 font is a body font size. So I'm going to make this one my body. So I'm going to add it, rename it, double clicking to rename it, and that's my body. I'm dragging it there. Great. Now, as you can tell here, this thing is repeated over and over and over again, and it's going to kind of go off the page like a carousel, like where I can scroll through. So what I'm going to do is we have this amazing feature called Repeat Grid, which is something else I would suggest for beginner designers to start getting familiar with. If you have something that you're repeating in a row over and over and over again, you can just turn on Repeat Grid over here in the upper right-hand corner. At the very top, it says Repeat Grid. Again, in your property inspector, turn that on. And then you're going to see these two little handlebars on the right and on the bottom, these little two green handlebars. So if I drag these little handlebars over to the right, it's going to just create that same thing to infinity. Same thing if I bring it down this way. Cool. Now I'm going to say, okay, cool. That's what I want it to do. Perfect. Now, what that means is, yes, it creates them to infinity, but it also means kind of like with the components, if I move this down, it's reflecting on all of them, but it's only going to reflect these guys in this row. Okay, that's repeat grid. And now we're down to the final menu here below. So I'm going to make a rectangle here. That's my menu. Go into my little plugins, into my icons. It's already available for me. And I'm going to click, I'm going to find search. Doop. Now from here, I'm going to bring in that little search. Doop. I make sounds while I design. I don't know if you guys do or make sounds while you make, do other like tedious things on the computer. I do. Okay, so I'm going to label this search. All right, a question from you guys was, are you able to change individual instance of components without changing them all? Yes, you can. So if you saw earlier, I was able to grab this guy, my little instance, my replica, and I was able to change, I can change this to pink, and it's not going to affect any of the other ones. Only when I change the main component will it now reflect on all the other ones, okay? So it's really flexible system for components. Just when you change the main one, the one that rules them all, does it reflect on all the other ones. All right, so we are a little bit getting lower on time, so I'm going to not look at the chat for a little bit as I continue moving forward. Sorry, guys, but Jamie should be able to answer majority of these for you guys. Okay. So here we go. We have search, and then I'm going to have favorites. So I'm going to want a little heart, and I'm going to bring in that guy. And just copy and pasting that. Oh, and then I have the final one, which is menu. Cool. So I'm going to look for a menu now. And bring that guy in. So something you're seeing here that I was a little struggling with right now is grabbing this layer when I'm supposed to be grabbing this layer. And this is also the challenge you're going to find when you're getting into design is layers that are moving when you don't want them to move. This is the #1 problem I see designers struggle with. So you have to make sure it's highlighted. You have to get in close to bring it in. Cool. So I want this layer to be centered with this layer. So remember, I grabbed these two, and then I'm just going to align it right here in the upper right hand corner here. Align center. Those are aligned now. And the other thing I want to do now is group them. Command G or Control Z or right click and make that a group. Right, so now I can just move them around easily. Same thing here. I want to align these two. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to align them. I want this to kind of get a little bit closer to this one. And I'm going to make these a group. And the last thing I'm going to do is make this whole menu a group. Right click, make a group. Yay, we're done with the wireframe. And because we did such a good job with character styles and whatnot here, it's going to make our lives easier when we get into high fidelity. Yes, let's do it. So I'm going to make a copy of this artboard. Copy, paste, there it is. And let's get into high fidelity, fun stuff. Now I'm going to do my favorite thing about Adobe XD, which is just masking an image into a layer really quickly, really easily. And there's a couple ways that you can start to bring in images. And one is if I wanted to just have a, let's say, any image here from Google, and I could just drag it in, and there we go. There's an image. So simple, so easy. The other way is I'm going to show you another plugin that I use called Free Stock Search for XD. These are free stock images. So I can select Unsplash, Pixabay, Pexels. These are all free. And I also use Adobe Stock as well. So I'm going to have all those selected and say, okay, these are all free. So I'm going to search in here live music. And I see this like guy on the guitar. He's like, woo, rocking it. I'm going to just select it. And on the very bottom, it says apply selected files. There it is. He's in there. Cool. One thing I will mention with photos, or sorry, with shapes, anytime you make a shape, this was a rectangle before, it always has a border, it always has an outline. And so I am going to just unclick the border to get rid of that. Now, the thing that we have not talked about yet in the assets panel is colors. So just like character styles, the same thing goes with colors. If you have a color added to your assets panel and you change it, it will reflect that change across all of your screens. So I actually, I'm going to put in the back here, I want to use like this Spotify black. So in order to make this background, I'm going to select my artboard, and that's how I can change this background appearance fill color. That's how I can change this whole background of the artboard. And I want it to be this Spotify black. So if I want to take a specific color from a screen, I can use this little eyedropper over here. Next to 100% in the color, it says pick color from screen, this little eyedropper. And I'm going to select that. Now you can see the whole background is that color. But now look, all of my white font, all my black font needs to be white. So I'm going to take this black font and I'm going to add it to my colors in my assets panel. So now anytime I change this color, it's going to reflect across all my screens. Now I don't want black, I want white. So I'm going to edit it and make it white. And now you see all my fonts are showing up. It's taking that black color and reflecting it on all of the other screens there. Woo, makes it life so much easier. Now, of course, here, this should not be white. I need to change, this should not be white. I need to change that. But for the majority, I wanted them white like this. Cool. Now from there, I want to change the color. I want you guys to help me think of some colors. I'm going to give you two options. Let's play around here. We can do, we could do, no, not crazy red. We can do a purple, that's an option. Or we can do like a crazy pink, whoa. Tell me what you guys think, purple or pink. As I'm doing that, I am just going to add this color into my color palette here. And I want to make this a little bit friendlier, not sharp edges. So I'm going to want this to be curved edges in my rectangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this little corner and make it round. And it's reflecting on all four corners. Yay! I can also change that over here on the right-hand side in my properties inspector over the pink color. I can change that there as well. I want that to be 6. Cool. And then from there, I'm going to just make this bolder. Cool. Now I want to fill in these images here. So I'm going to take my plugin. Oh, you guys like pink, huh? Yay! Cool. I'm going to take in this group here, and I'm going to get back into my free stock search, and I'm just going to like grab these, they already pre-selected these images for me. So I'm like, sure, we'll do those for images, and I'll apply selected, and they just replaced them all now. I'm gonna get rid of that gray border there. Yay, it's starting to look real, right, guys? Yes, we only have the last final menu to do. So let's go into this little menu. I want to change this to also Spotify's gray color. So I want to make sure that this layer is selected. Now, when I selected this, you're going to notice in my layers panel, the whole group was selected, but I don't want the whole group. I want just that background rectangle layer to change that color. So this is, again, where groups and layers get a little confusing. You can get into that specific layer by selecting rectangle here. And now what I'm gonna do is use that little eyedropper here and bring in that gray, yay. And I'm just gonna unselect that border again. I hate that little border. And voila, the high fidelity is done. Yay! And just in time, guys. 9:55. Wow. So you can see how quickly you can go from a wireframe to a high fidelity when you get everything done well, when you're kind of having all your colors, your components, your character styles, if you're really utilizing that and using the repeat grid and so forth. Some of these couple features I shared with you, don't worry about using them all, maybe just one or two of them initially to get started. And I think that you guys will be well on your way. Yeah, so I highly suggest you guys create this yourself too afterwards. Play the video, pause, do it in your own screen, play and pause, and work it out that way. All right, we're gonna have some time now for some Q&A. Let's see what questions I did not answer here. Okay, is there a plugin or a tool that allows you to sketch or draw your low fidelity designs in Adobe XD? Okay, a plugin or tool that allows you to sketch or draw your low fidelity. There is a plugin that already has, there's like a, it's called Wireframer. And this Wireframer, like if you wanted to search for like a map, you wanted that in your screen. This is only for mobile, unfortunately. And so you can bring that guy in and like you can adjust and manipulate this design that's already made. It's called a UI kit. And you can find UI kits through your, just through a regular Google search. There's also XD Guru. Jamie could put that link in as well. And then, oh, Jamie said Whiteboard. Huh. Let me see. So Whiteboard is another great plugin I use. I have not used it for sketching. So Whiteboard here you can use, they have all these tools that you can use for that UX designers use. I typically use this customer journey map, etc. The great thing about these are that you can select something here. And Jamie is saying it's next to elements, third tab. Okay, so you can grab this and you can see what this tool is and how to use it. It's amazing. So if you want to understand what an affinity diagram is, and all these tools that UX designers use, then you can do that. All right, so here, so Jamie said it's here. The third one here is draw. The third option under Whiteboard. So if you want to play around with drawing, play around with that. I typically love drawing with pen and paper or on a whiteboard, like a physical whiteboard. Like that's just the way I learned. So I'm so used to doing it that way. But I feel like this would be really cool to try out and check out. So I'll do that another time. Cool. Next, can XD allow to design as a team? So there is the way you can collaborate with other designers. And the way to do that is you can go into this upper right-hand corner where it says invite to document. And from there, you can add people with their Adobe Creative Cloud email, and they can also come into this same design file with you. So you can design and collaborate in real time together. That feature, so you can invite people into your design file, and you can collaborate in there, meaning I can like drop in some files, we can both share the same main file, but we can also co-edit and design in real time together when you enable co-editing. Now this says it's in beta because it's not yet fully functional, it doesn't work perfectly, so just be aware of that when you do that, okay? And then we have another question. This will be the last question here. Unless, Jamie, you think that we have more time before Jakob also has his little talk or his closing. So, okay, this is the last one. Can you create a design system in XD? Yes, you can. So I showed you guys a little teaser of that. So this is a design system that I created for another file. That's also a music app. Obviously, you guys, I like music. There's a theme here. And how you would do that is you're basically doing all those things that I showed you guys, where you're having colors added, character styles, components added, everything like that. But instead of doing them in the screen, you would do them in, like in this button states artboard. You're like, this is what my main button looks like. This is what a hover state looks like, etc. And it can kind of get more expansive that way. You can have all your components laid out here. You can bring your character styles and all of your colors. You're going to basically create them all in this file. Now, what I will suggest is there's two ways of going about it. You can create your design system in that same design file that you were designing in, here. So if I were like, okay, I want an artboard with all of my colors, you can, create a color here, and then you can add that into your color assets panel there, and you can create your design system in here. But I typically, this is what I would suggest for beginners to do, but I now create my design files into a separate design. I create my design systems in a separate file here, because then I can share it with other designers. We can both work off of it in the same file together, and I don't have to worry about like it getting confused with my actual artboards, my actual designs. They're separated. This is just going to be used for the design system between a team. So you can create a design system, and really what you got was the basics of it, where you can change out colors, etc., all in your design system, and it will reflect on all of the designs that are using that design system. Okay. All right, so thank you guys so much for working through that with me. I hope you enjoyed our session. Let me get off and sharing my screen, show you my full face. Yes, so thank you guys so much for doing this with me. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to Jamie or myself, and we'd be happy to chat more about Adobe XD with you. And I hope you catch the next workshop next week, prototyping, going further into it. All right.
Elizé, thank you so much. So Elizé already mentioned the next Adobe XD webinar happening next week on the 30th of September. I'll make sure I'll include the link to that webinar in the follow-up mail coming out later today or tomorrow morning. I'll also include the recording of it, so we can all check it out again and try to follow what Elizé was doing. Just to close the webinar, Elizé, thanks so much again. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, at the moment, we're offering a Women in Tech scholarship in which you can receive up to 15% of our programs. And to learn more how to get the scholarship and to check your eligibility, all you need to do is to book a call with a career advisor, and you'll be redirected to that booking page right after we close the webinar. So just make sure you stay on that page and you don't go anywhere. And with that, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week.